Welcome back to Client Stories with DNAngels. I'm Laura. I'm your executive director and founder. Remember when I told you that you can't make this stuff up? Let me give you a little bit more of this story now. So my client came to us and said that she was DCP and had recently found out that she was DCP and was conceived via IVF. She was raised by a single mother that was an attorney at the time her entire life. And now the client is in college, and she recently approached her mother that raised her and said, "Hey, tell me about my dad," because she didn't know she was IVF, right? She didn't know she was DCP. And so the mother that raised her said, "I used a sperm donor. I always wanted to be a mom." So she didn't tell her mom, and she took a DNA test and then came to DNAngels. She said, "Donor conceived person, will you please help me find out who my donor is? I don't know anything about him. I don't have a donor profile. I don't know where the fertility clinic is or anything. And my mom doesn't know that I took this test." And by the way, she's over 18. She took a DNA test on her own. And I said, "Sure, we'll help you. Not a problem." And so she's away at college, and she orders this DNA test, and she comes to us, and we take her case. So easy peasy, we went in, we sorted the networks, we were able to figure out who grandma and grandpa were, and grandma and grandpa had 2 boys and a girl. So we were looking at the boys, and neither one of them really were medical students, anybody that you would typically assume was a donor. So in general, we know there's always those outliers, but in general, for the year that she was born, a donor would have been a medical student, or at least a college student, because that's where the fertility clinics advertise, is normally at universities. So that's okay. I've had many donors that were not medical students or college educated in any way. So we told her there were 2 boys, and it's probably this boy versus this boy just because of the circumstances. One of the boys was married and had kids already, and the other one did seem to have achieved more in life, so we thought it was probably him, and he married later after she was born. And so we thought that was it, right? And we gave her contact information for the 2 boys, and we let her know also that the boys had a sister. It probably wasn't an hour later, she came back and she said, "Hey, I was just talking to a second cousin of mine on Ancestry, and she said that her cousin is my mom, and it's not the boys that is my donor. Their sister is my mom." And she's very freaked out. She's like, "I feel like this is a scam." And I said, I understand. It's probably scary to hear something like that. Give me just a second. I need to look at the other side of your tree. I hadn't looked at the other side because she said that was her mother's side. And by the way, her last name is a name that does show up on the other side of the DNA. It's a common name, but there's a lot of matches to that last name. So I went and looked, and I said, sure enough, the lady that raised you, her family is not a DNA match to you. I'm going to believe this second cousin when she says that the boy's sister is your mom. So let's go find your dad. And that's exactly what we did. So dad's side was quite complicated. There were 4 networks going to dad's side. And anyone that knows genetic genealogy and how you break down the DNA, you're only hoping for 2 networks. 1 network going to grandma and 1 network going to grandpa. But in this case, there was definitely multiple breaks in the chain. However, right as we were getting to the conclusion of the case, she comes back and says, "I talked to my cousin again, and she told me who my dad was." And sure as shit, we had him in the tree. So we said, yes, that conclusion absolutely works. You are a DNA match to that family, but there's a problem with his mom. Maybe his mom's adopted, and that's why we have so many networks. So I would definitely be asking questions when you reach out. See if he'll take a DNA test. It's not that I don't believe it, because the DNA does match up in the genetic distance that it should. But let's just get that secondary verification. We never want to assume. But I've been around the world long enough to know that if that man's in my tree and the genetic distance is right, he's our dad. So there's more to the story, right? And if you're liking this story and you want to show your support for our client, which I didn't even give her name, and that's okay, please leave a purple heart, because I'm wearing purple today and it's one of her favorite colors. And it's one of mine too, obviously. By the way, we are going to start our newsletter up again this month. If you would like to know what's happening at DNA Angels on a weekly basis, we're going to do one weekly email that tells you a recap of what happened at DNA Angels this week. And then once a month, we'll do a longer version, a newsletter. So if you want to do that, go to DNAangels.org and scroll to the bottom of the page and sign up for the newsletter. So let's leave a purple heart. And here's the conclusion of the case. When we last left off with the client, she had started back to school because it was a school break, and she had talked to her bio mom on the phone and got the entire story. And it goes a little bit like this. Mom had a problem in the past with addiction issues, and the attorney that was helping her on her case offered to adopt the baby that she was carrying, and she agreed to it. It was an open adoption. And an open adoption in the state of Alabama means that when the child reaches age, the right age, they can have access to their full original birth certificate information. So I gave her all the information on that so that she could get that. But the open adoption doesn't necessarily mean that the birth mother is going to see the baby as the baby grows up. So I don't know what was going on in the attorney's head. Who's no longer an attorney. She holds a very high-profile office in the state. But by telling her child that she's conceived via IVF, she's really just opening the Pandora's box, because now that child's going to want to know who her donor is. She's going to take a DNA test. One thing leads to another. She's going to realize you're not her mom either. So my client went from being a DCP, a donor conceived person, to an LDA, a late discovery adoptee, which just compounds the fact of the genetic bewilderment that she's experiencing. She's experiencing that she doesn't know who the heck she is, because now not only is her dad not a donor, her mom that raised her is not her biological mother. And this could have went so much better if mom just would have been honest from the start, especially with Alabama being an open state. And maybe that's why she did it. Maybe she thought, if I lie to her long enough, she'll never know that she's adopted. Look, I get really mad about our parents lying to us because I also experienced a similar situation. Stop lying to your kids. Santa Claus ain't real. Don't even start with that lie, right? Because once you practice to deceive, it's easy to just keep it up. Think about that. Santa Claus is not real. The Easter Bunny is not real. You're teaching your children that it's okay for the parents to lie. It's okay. As long as there's a pretty story behind it, it's okay to lie. I know that's going to set some of you off, and I challenge you to prove me wrong. Prove me wrong that by telling a child that Santa Claus is real and the Easter Bunny is real, that we're not creating a culture where it's okay to tell little white lies. Just tell the truth. Because I guarantee you, when your child finds out as an adult, you're going to re-traumatize them or traumatize them. And it's not small trauma. This is something that you get PTSD from. Please tell your child the truth. And if you support us and you support our clients' right to know the truth, leave a purple heart, and I'll see you in the comments.